فارس الهيج وجرار الوغى.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعن أعدائهم. Brothers and sisters, all of you, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullah. We are here today with another episode of the Shia podcast, and our lovely guest today is Brother Mohammad Fahim Akbar. Brother Mohammad, Salamun alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for the invitation, and may Allah bless you for all the works and efforts you do.
Thank you so much. Today we have an amazing person with us. He was a finalist from the Shia Voice competition that happened in London. And Brother Muhammad is initially from Berlin. So for him to go towards the khidmah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it just shows you how much passion he has towards the khidmah. What was your inspiration for reciting, Brother Muhammad?
Recitation of the Holy Quran or the nohas and latmiyas?
So what did you start with initially? Did you start with Latmiyat or did you start with Quran initially?
I started as a child in the age of 3 or 4, starting or getting in touch with the Quran, and initially I started with the Quran recitation, like maybe for the first age of 3 or 4 until the age of not until but the first steps were the Holy Quran, and in the maybe the past 12 years I started reciting also nohas, and the inspiration behind the Quran recitation was I grew up in a family where my parents they had cassettes and like some recitations of Ahlulbayt Abdul Samad, and my dad used to tell me that when I was a child he used to play for example Quran recitations, and he noticed that I, as a child, very quickly started to adapt or started to copy the things I heard, like the recitation, the Quran recitations, for example, of Abdul Basit. Even though I was not able to talk or not to talk properly or to recite properly, I used to copy the recitation or the vocals, and when he saw that, he kept going and kept showing me and playing more recitations of, for example, Abdul Basit Abdul Samad. And that was the way where I started the inspiration to go the way of Quran and learning the Quran, and especially Tajweed and the Quranic recitation we are used to, especially from the Egyptian Qaris, international legends we had, like Abdul Basit, Muhammad Siddiq Minshawi, Mustafa Ismail, and that was the first step into recitations, Islamic recitations. And later, the inspiration for nohas and latmiyas started. I think the first inspiration was in the age of 5 or 6, when I first attended a majlis in Tehran in one of the Husseiniats of the uncle of my mom. So just generally speaking, I come from an Afghan family. I was born in Germany and raised in Germany. I never saw Afghanistan, but we had families in Iran, families from my mom's side, and many years they had a big Husseinia in Tehran. Especially the Muharram Majalis were very big, and also many years ago, like many decades ago, my family from the mother's side was known in Afghanistan, especially in Kabul, for having one of the biggest and for having one of the most known Husseinia in our language. In Dari Farsi we say Takia Khana. It's something like like Husseiniya. And my grandfather, my great grandfather from the mother side was a poet, and he owned that Husseiniya. And the inspiration for doing Noha and Latim was in the age of 5 or 6 when I first attended the Majlis of Muharram in Tehran, in that Husseiniya of the uncle of my mother, and seeing also the Majlis and the Husseiniya and the Muharram Majlis in the traditional Afghan style was a big influence and also a big inspiration. That through the years, on the one hand, I was reciting Quran and was a Quranist reciter, and on the other side, I was kind of looking, or was seeking to find majalis and to go after the other inspiration I had. And I remember we had also videotapes of the majalis from that Husseiniya. When I was a child, I used to play them at home and do latim and also do zanjir on my own, by myself, being completely alone, because I was so into that, even the age of as a child. I remember learning how to do latim, learning how to do zanjir back then when I was in Iran with at my family's house with my uncles, and that was also a big influence, inspiration, and something I used to, or I learned to love. On the one hand, the being a Quran reciter who, even in the age of in a very young age, recited in multiple countries, in different cities and different crowds. Also, being in Sunni mosques and being used to even recite in front of Sunnis for a long period of time. And yeah, and then the inspiration of Quran was the one I told you, and the inspiration for doing nohas and latmiya, the inspiration was the first time attending a majlis in Tehran, and then after growing up, while seeing that there is nothing similar to that what I experienced in the Husseiniya of the uncle of my mom, I kept trying to find a way either to find someone who recites like that or to recite myself, because I loved it, of course, and so that I can relive those moments.
Yeah, I saw you said you used to recite in front of Sunnis. Is there any difference between reciting in front of Sunnis and Shias? Are there different emotions or different vibes to it, feeling?
You have to know that we in Germany, we our community used to be even together with Sunnis. Our Afghan community, back then, we did not have a mosque. We had something like a language school and an Afghan language school, where we had many common programs like New Year and so on, the Persian New Year and other cultural things, where we used to be all the time together with Sunnis. Back then it was not a topic, being Sunni or Shia. Of course, if you go deep in the topic, being Sunni and Shia was always a thing, but yeah, later it became bigger. Reciting in front of Sunnis, I to make progress. My father was looking for opportunities where I can learn, or where I could use some platforms to make my own progression in being a qari. And I used to go to a Turkish mosque, Turkish Sunni mosque, and I was even a member of that mosque, only to attend their competitions, because in Germany we have there's a big community, a big Turkish Sunni community, and they I think still have annual Quran competitions. And back then, I think was one of the biggest competitions a teen or a child could attend. And Alhamdulillah, I participated in 2 rows of competitions where I was successfully as well in Berlin, also in Germany wide, and also European competition. And reciting in those majalis with the Sunnis, of course it's different, but due to the fact that I was a child or I was a teen, the focus was somewhere else. The focus was trying to use every opportunity and every chance to grow and to learn something that unfortunately many people say that sometimes you have the feeling that Sunnis are more dedicated to the Quran, less dedicated to the Ahlulbayt. Shias are more dedicated to the Ahlulbayt, less to the Quran. Sometimes you like when you see there's no opportunity or no chance in the Shia communities. Of course, you have to see where you can find the proper programs, especially when you're a parent and you want to give the best for your child. And nonetheless, all the experiences were very good because with these experiences I know or I can relate to different majalis, to different programs. The same way I was and I am still being invited to Shia programs, to big Shia programs, personally online in different countries, in different cities of Germany, for example. I also used to be invited for big programs from Sunnis, and in Germany, in Europe. I remember in Austria, there was a big program where they invited me alongside Dr. Nuaina, who is a big Qari from Egypt, very, very known, one of the most famous students of late Sheikh Mustafa Ismail. And the atmosphere is different, especially when you then start to if you start saying Sadaqallah al-Ali al-Azim, when you're a child and you're a teen, it's not a big thing, but later, of course, people will either say something, or even if they don't say something, it's okay. Like we know that they have something in their mind, but as long as like personally, I don't have anything against Sunnis. I don't have anything against Christians. I don't have anything against Jews or Buddhists or atheists, because in my mindset, learning that what I learned from the lessons from Ahlulbayt is like either it's your brethren in religion, or you're equal in humanity. And as long as the person as long as we have this base, like I can live with anybody peacefully. That's not because many people people, they are used to say or used to tell people like us, like we guess you have a problem with Sunnis. I don't have a problem with Sunni. I don't have a problem with a Christian. I don't have a problem with a Jew. The only thing is that we have our beliefs the same way other people have their beliefs, and it's not a problem if someone else has a different belief. It's okay. I don't have a problem with that, as long as you allow me to have my belief, and as long as you allow me to have my belief and do whatever I think is part of my religion. I don't have a problem with you having your religion and your belief. And so it's all about experiences I gained through the years. Alhamdulillah for everything. The difference between reciting only Quran without the knowledge about the Ahlulbayt is that sometimes I fear or sometimes I can tell that many Qaris, especially um, Shia Qaris, those who, for example, grew up in the Western societies like Europe, America, Australia. Sometimes when you don't have the input of the Ahlulbayt, Quran, reciting the Quran, sometimes only you think it's like the only thing that matters, to recite the Quran. The problem is, even if you understand the meaning, that's not enough, because it's not enough just to read the translation, to have a proper recitation. Because reciting the Quran without me knowing the exact meaning, and maybe the very, very exact meaning. What do I mean with the very, very exact meaning? Of course, the way the Ahlul Bayt told us the exact meaning of the Quran, that means the very, very exact meaning, uh, by the will of Allah, what is meant. Because that's the problem we have today. We have a lot of people who interpret the Quran differently, and we do our best to stick with the interpretation of the Ahlul Bayt, with the 14 Ma'sumin who uh, are able to tell us exactly what is meant by any verse, every verse of the Quran, in relation to Allah's exactly meaning of the ayat. And when you don't have this, for qaris, it's pretty difficult, because after a certain time, reciting the Quran almost becomes like having a nice sound, nice melody, and only copying from this qari and copying from that qari. And therefore, one of the biggest efforts, or one of the biggest steps I took, was starting to combine that few knowledge I had with more lectures and more input, and because whenever you are able to combine the knowledge with the Quran recitations, you can use all the arts of the Quran recitation, like being those melodies, being the sound that your own voice that you use, and of course the tajweed that you have to be aware of, and be able to use it with the exact meanings of the Quran verses. Sometimes you notice that some people, they only think Quran recitation is like somebody dies and you bring up a Qari who recites very beautifully, but nobody understands the meaning of the Quran, uh, except for maybe some Arabs who can relate to some of the Arabic words of the Quran. But that's not enough. This is something that is my own goal, to be able to recite the Quran in a way where I, first of all, myself, I'm aware of the meaning. I'm also aware of the links, of the Quran to the Ahlul Bayt, because we have a lot of links. And if you have if a bit knowledge about these links, and a bit knowledge about some narrations where you can look those up and find those links between the Quran and Ahlul Bayt, it makes the Quran recitation much, much more beautiful. And if the Qari is able to, for himself at the first place, make himself aware of this, and combining the knowledge with the Quran recitation, and then being able to use all the arts of recitations, like the melodies, his voice, and the tajweed and the maqamat, to bring these meanings to the audience. I think this is the best and biggest goal that a Quran reciter could have. Yeah.
MashaAllah. You speak a lot about reciting a different sentence, and you talk about how you really understood the Quran more when you got into the meanings. What's one ayah that you always, when you read Quran, that when you always get back on it, that has that special meaning towards you, especially when you look at the the translation for it. So the meaning behind that ayah. Do you have a specific ayah in mind?
There is not right now. There's not one specific ayah, but there is some specific ayahs. For example, I can give you some examples.
Like,
Some verses that usually at the beginning of, like, for a new for a for a mainstream Muslim, like even for a Shia Muslim who does not have so much knowledge. For example, Surah Al-Fatiha, the last verse says, صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. It's a very, very common verse, common surah. Everybody knows that. Everyone is reciting this ayah. But when you understand what it means, what the meaning of صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم is, and you understand the people who Allah gave ni'mah, and you understand the very meaning of this part of the ayah, then you understand, okay, this is only meant, the only people who are meant with those people who got ni'mah from Allah, it's only the 14 ma'sumin and the 12 imams. Then you recite the Quran differently. There and the very fact that you have so many links in the Quran, so many unfortunately hidden by other people. I could tell you at least 2-3 other examples. You have, for example, Surah Al-Tahrim, where it says, إن تتوبا إلى الله فقد صغت قلوبكما وإن تظاهر عليه فإن الله هو مولاه وجبريل وصالح المؤمنين. The very known verse about the two wives of the Prophet, Aisha and Hafsa lanatullah alayha, who about the story everyone knows. The moment where the Quran says وإن تظاهر عليه فإن الله هو مولاه وجبريل وصالح المؤمنين. Like the wali, the people who are, like, if I would like to translate it very, very commonly, like truly Allah is with the Prophet and Jibreel and Salih al-Mu'mineen. Who is Salih al-Mu'mineen? It's nobody else but Imam Ali. And if you as a Qari notice that there are many, many, many links, this is a big changer, big game changer for you, because you see the Quran differently, you recite the Quran differently, and suddenly you find that maybe lost love to the Quran. Sometimes when for the Quran reciter, if the Quran recitation gets very, very usually for him, sometimes you lose the love to recite, and that lost love, sometimes I think it's to find the links to the Ahlulbayt, and there are many links, and if you find those for a Qari, I think the very love reappears.
mashallah. You previously also talked about reciting in different melodies. Would you mind
Yes,
reciting one of your favorite ayahs in a melody that's close to your heart?
of course there are many different melodies in the art of recitation. You have many known melodies. We have Bayati, we have Rust, we have Hijaz, we have Nahawand, we have Siga, we have Charga,
Well,
we have Ajam.
you spoke about the ayah صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. How's about just doing a quick one for Surah Al-Hamd?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Ahsant, and may Allah bless you for this beautiful, beautiful
MashaAllah.
recitation.
Thank you very much.
Do you feel any presence of any imams when you recite Quran or on a nohas? Can you like feel a presence of any imams around you?
I have to be honest. It depends on yourself. If your ma'rifah and your iman is in a certain level, in a certain time, yes. But if you have lack of ma'rifah or lack of iman, sometimes when you have a lack of focus, sometimes it can happen that you recite and you don't have this feeling of the presence of Imam. But it's not the problem lies within us, but not within the not somewhere else. You know what I mean? But yes, I had certain times where in certain recitations, I could feel a certain presence, or where I had a certain feeling. Um, Sometimes I used to tell some friends a story about me reciting in Fatimiya. That when I recite nohas in Fatimiya, that I have a different feeling than reciting in Muharram, because Muharram, of course, it's something very very common, and like everybody everywhere is reciting for in Muharram. But due to the fact that in some communities, especially Fatimiyya, is very very hidden, or is being very 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 underestimated, or people try to not to make Fatimiyya bigger than it is. Um, for me personally, when I notice, for example, even in our own communities, that people try to say, "Yeah, Fatimiyya, just have one day majlis. That's okay. That's fine. We don't need to, we don't need to make it a second Ashura, a second Muharram. And even if there's no Latim or no Sinazani, so it's okay. It's not Muharram. It's enough if you just commemorate, and yeah, don't exaggerate it." But when I got in touch with the story of Fatimiyya, because I unfortunately I wasn't told the story about Fatimiyya until I think 5 6 years ago. I don't know, 6 years ago, more or less. Um, in the Afghan Shia community, you have the problem that Fatimiyya is a story that is being very very hidden, obviously. And there's a big problem because people, especially the Shia youth, is not able to get in touch with the story. And if you are aware that this story is a very 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 important story, this story leads to Ashura. This one leads to Karbala. Saqifa leads to the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. And if you don't have this knowledge, then yeah, Muharram is only, if you ask a normal Shia guy, what is Imam Hussein to you? Like, yeah, Muharram, Ashura. He's being martyred, and then yeah, that's all. But after me understanding or have a certain understanding about Fatimiyya, I started in our communities to do whatever I could to make the programs bigger, to make the majalis bigger, and not being content just with one day majlis, but forcing the officials to have majalis that are more than one day, like 2 days, 3 days. We have the different narrations of Fatimiyya, so that we have on a certain narration we have like 2 or 3 days for the one narration, and 2 or 3 days for the other narrations. And my personal goal would be that one day in the communities where I am, for example in Berlin, then we can have the majalis for Fatimiyya, maybe every narration 5 days, maybe one day for every narration 10 days, so that we can have those majalis and really really can be able to have the knowledge to understand the real Islam, really what happened, and to be able to have the majlis that is supposed to be in our communities. And yeah, sometimes I talk too much, but let's get to the point. When I in the past years, whenever I started reciting in Fatimiya for the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, my nohas that I recited, although the majalis were much smaller than of course the other majalis. We had in Berlin majalis for Ashura, where we had 1,500 people inside of the mosque inside of our community, and outside of the like on the in front of the mosque, we had visitors on certain days up to 4,000 or 5,000 people. Of course, you have in Fatimiyya, if you're lucky, or because of the lack of awareness, you don't have as many people who come to Fatimiyya. We had days where only 30, 40, 50 people came for Fatimiyya, and although the majalis for Fatimiyya have a certain they're much smaller than Ashura and Muharram, the feeling I had in Fatimiyya was different, because the only times I could not control myself while reciting a noha, a latmiya, and I started crying during a recitation, while reciting a noha, starting to cry was in Fatimiyya, because I couldn't control myself. And this was a very, very, very difficult moment for me, because I was wondering how come that I recite in Muharram like 10 days, 13 days in a row, then every week until Arba'een, then we have Arba'een, then we have the martyrdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and Imam Rida and Imam Hassan Mujtaba alayhi salam. How come that how come I control myself while reciting the Nohas for every other Imam, or even Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? How come I cannot control myself in Fatimiyya? And this is the moments where I said to myself, I guess this is different, and this is something special, and not everybody has the blessing to be able to recite in Fatimiyya, whether it is Quran or it is noha or something else.
May Allah bless you, and may I ask Mawlati Fatima Zahra Salamullahi alayha to bless you. Brother Muhammad, I got a question to ask you.
Yes.
From what you've been talking to us, I can see that you have a very big relationship with Ayam al-Fatimiyya and with Mawlati Fatima Salamullahi alayha. Now,
Yeah.
imagine Fatima Zahra Salamullahi alayha was right in front of you right now. Which noha would you recite for her?
There are certain nohas. But it's really not an easy question for me, because I don't know if I would be able to recite anything if she would be in front of me. Of course, when I recite, the difference between traditional Afghan nohas and maybe the Iranian nohas is that the poems are very, very in a very different stage. Let's say that when you recite the nohas, the poems, you start to see yourself in that moment, in that situation. And this is also one of the reasons why I couldn't control myself. And for me to recite in front of Fatima Zahra, no, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to, because
I don't think anyone would.
if I cannot control myself while I recite in Fatimiyya, and of course I cannot see her, but I have a certain feeling, and I cannot control myself. What do you think I would be? How I'd be looking when she would be there personally, and when I would try to recite. I would not be able to recite. And you have to know that I'm when it comes to nohas and the niyas, in the first place, I don't see myself in the first place as a noha khan, as a latmiya reciter, but as someone who does latam, who does sinazani. I'm usually the guy you see in the first place, either sitting in the front row and doing latam or doing zanjir. In the first place, I'm that guy. And on the second stage, I'm the reciter. And I guess I wouldn't be able to do anything but doing matam, doing latam, zanjir, and then to cry.
That just shows how true of a Fatimiya you are and your sincereness towards Fatima sallallahu alaihi. Brother Muhammad, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up. It's been an honor, and we would love to go for another 2 hours. We can't get enough of you. Would you like to bless us with a noha for Fatimiya, just so we can end it?
Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
حال من تنها را برخیز و تماشا کن، در خانه که می آیم در بر رخ من وا کن، در خانه که می آیم در بر رخ من وا کن. ای حامی من برخیز و ببین، ای حامی من برخیز و ببین، شد فاتح خیبر خانه نشین، شد فاتح خیبر خانه نشین. آرام دل حیدر، آرام دل حیدر، آرام دل حیدر، آرام دل حیدر. ای یار جوان مرگم، ای شمع شب تارم، ای یار جوان مرگم، ای شمع شب تارم، در آتش تنهایی می سوزم و می سازم، در آتش تنهایی می سوزم و می سازم. آرام دل حیدر، آرام دل حیدر. با رفتنت ای زهرا از خانه صفا رفتم، با رفتنت ای زهرا از خانه صفا رفتم. زینب به حسین گوید مادر به کجا رفته، زینب به حسین گوید مادر به کجا رفته. آرام دل حیدر، آرام دل حیدر. بان که نمی گفتی در کوچه چه ها رخ داد، بان که نمی گفتی در کوچه چه ها رخ داد، اما به سؤال من رخسار تو پاسخ داد، اما به سؤال من رخسار تو پاسخ داد. ای حامی من برخیز و ببین، ای حامی من برخیز و ببین، شد فاتح خیبر خانه نشین، شد فاتح خیبر خانه نشین. آرام دل حیدر آرام دل حیدر آرام دل حیدر آرام دل حیدر برق الفضول مغیرب ابن سحاک لعنت بر دخت نبی و زوجه حیدر صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Ali, ya Ali, ya Ali. MashaAllah, brother. MashaAllah. I don't understand Farsi, but as soon as I hear some of the words that you say about Fatima Salamullah alayha and just the way you recite it, it just brings tears to our eyes. May Fatima Salamullah alayha bless you and from
Yeah.
this earth to entirety.
Thank you very much.
Habibi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on to our podcast today. It was an honor having us and serving you and doing the dhikr of Mawlati Fatima Salamullah alayha. You are a gem. May Allah bless you. And
Thank you very
thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you for the invitation, and may Allah bless you all, guys, and may Allah grant us the opportunity to, inshallah, continue serve Quran, Ahlulbayt, inshallah, the way
Sure.
Allah, His Prophet, and His progeny expect from us, inshallah.
الله أكبر لبيك حيدر